Hello, everyone, and welcome to America's election headquarters. I'm Melissa Francis.
And hello, Melissa. Good to see you today.
Thank you.
And hello, everyone. Good to see you, too. I'm Eric Shawn. We know FBI Director James Comey has been on the receiving end of even more criticism this weekend for that controversial decision to take another look at the Clinton email investigation so close to Election Day. Just a short time ago on Fox News Sunday, Donald Trump's running mate, Governor Mike Pence, said that he thinks, though, the FBI director did make the right call.
We commend the director of the FBI and the FBI for following through on their work before the Congress, that if there was new, pertinent information sufficient to reopen this investigation, that they would inform Congress of that fact and they would move forward.
And we have live Team Fox News coverage of all this. John Roberts, Mike Emanuel, they're on deck with the very latest from each of the campaigns. But let's begin with our chief intelligence correspondent, Catherine Herridge, who has more on the FBI's investigation. She's live in Washington. Hi, Catherine.
Well, thanks, Eric. Fox's Brett Baer is reporting this hour based on two sources with knowledge of the FBI investigation that Anthony Weiner is cooperating in the New York sexting case. The new records, we're told thousands are involved, were found on a computer that Weiner and Abedin had access to. A separate source said the New York agents who found the new emails also assessed they were relevant and then flagged the discovery to the email case agents here in Washington. The Republican chairman of the House Intelligence Committee, who was notified by the FBI last week, spoke with Chris Wallace of Fox News Sunday.
To me, Chris, this has to be a substantial development. I just don't see Director Comey opening this case back up 11 days before the election unless it is quite serious.
Abedin told the FBI in April that she sent State Department emails, including this one from Clinton, to her personal Yahoo account where it was easier to print. And in June, Abedin swore under oath in a Freedom of Information Act lawsuit brought by Judicial Watch that she had searched all her devices for government records. That is now in doubt. And this morning, the Clinton camp was pressed for answers.
Why on earth wouldn't Hillary Clinton say to her closest personal aide, was there any stuff on that on your laptop, and what was it?
Chris, again, I appreciate your question because people want answers. There's nothing about Huma Abedin in the letter that was sent out.
I know that, but why wouldn't Clinton ask her?
Well, why wouldn't Clinton ask anybody? They could be emails from anybody in the world.
In his memo to FBI employees, Director Comey said they don't know if the emails are significant yet, but former FBI agents told Fox News that anything suggesting intent, lying to investigators, obstruction of justice, or sharing classified information with a foreign entity would warrant such a move. Eric.
All right, Catherine, a lot to go over. Thank you. Melissa?
You're welcome.
And on the Democratic side, Hillary Clinton is campaigning in Florida, meeting people at a bar in Miami this morning as top Senate Democrats demand more information about the newly discovered emails being investigated by the FBI. Senior political correspondent Mike Emanuel joins us live from Miami Sunday morning at a bar. There you go, Mike. What's the latest?
There you go, Melissa. Good morning to you. Hillary Clinton is trying to go on with normal campaign activities, speaking to voters, trying to get them to turn out for her in a matter of days, while her top campaign aides are left addressing questions about the email probe. Hillary Clinton did weigh in on the whole email investigation at a campaign event in Daytona Beach, Florida. She did take aim at FBI Director James Comey, announcing his announcement regarding her email investigation.
In fact, it's not just strange, it's unprecedented, and it is deeply troubling because voters deserve to get full and complete facts. And so we've called on Director Comey to explain everything right away, put it all out on the table.
Clinton's closest aide, Huma Abedin, is not on this campaign trip to Florida. It was the discovery of thousands of her emails on her estranged husband's laptop that reignited the whole email controversy. This morning, the Clinton campaign chairman was confronted, asked if this whole email mess is Hillary Clinton's fault.
Well, look, I think she's apologized for setting up a private email server. She said it was a mistake. She said she wouldn't do it over again. I think, it's very clear that this has been an issue through the course of this campaign.
While email questions continue to dog the campaign, the normal standard campaign activity continues with early voting going on in places like Florida and only 9 days left. Melissa?
I mean, that is a great point. As we sit here and discuss all of this, there are people all around the country who are voting. Thank you so much. Appreciate your time, Eric.
And we will be talking about early voting a little later on in our newscast and what the trends show us about this race. Meanwhile, Donald Trump has, of course, seized on the renewed email probe, and he is running with that, praising the FBI now for his decision after spending months of bashing the agency for what he's long been claiming is just part of what he has been saying is a, quote, rigged system. He's telling his supporters the renewed investigation is, in his view, further proof that Mrs. Clinton is guilty of a crime, he says. This all comes as a new poll shows that Mrs. Clinton's National League has been narrowing. Senior national correspondent John Roberts joins us live from Las Vegas, where Mr. Trump will be holding a rally there in a few hours. Hey, John.
Eric, good afternoon to you. Yeah, just about 2 hours from now, Donald Trump will be here at the Venetian. We can show you what the inside of the room, 8,000 or so. So a big crowd for Donald Trump expected. He trails Hillary Clinton in the Real Clear Politics average of Nevada polls by about 2 points. But there are indications that nationally the race is tightening even further. The new ABC News Washington Post daily tracking poll finds that the two candidates are separated by only a single point now. Hillary Clinton with 46%, Donald Trump with 45%. That is a net 11-point gain for Donald Trump since the tracking poll began a week ago when it was 50 to 38. Also, that poll found for the very first time that the reopening the FBI investigation has had some effect. Some 30% of voters said they may rethink their right, or at least that would make them less likely to vote for Hillary Clinton. If you do a rough calculation based on the percentages, that would mean as many as 13% of Hillary Clinton's voters may be thinking twice about whether or not they're going to vote for her. Donald Trump, of course, will continue to go hard on the FBI investigation today. Yesterday, he really slammed the Attorney General, Loretta Lynch, for trying to strong-arm the FBI director into not sending that letter to members of Congress. Here's what Trump said in Golden, Colorado yesterday.
But now the evidence, as I would imagine, is so overwhelming. The Attorney General didn't want anything to happen to Hillary. Folks, we're living in a third world country. Before. This is the lowest point in the history of our country.
And what a difference a day makes. Eric, you just alluded to this a second ago. The Donald Trump campaign has been slamming Comey since July when he said he made the decision that he was not going to press formal charges against Hillary Clinton. Meantime, the Clinton campaign had been praising Comey. Now the Donald Trump campaign is praising Comey for having the courage and the integrity to reopen its investigation, while the Clinton campaign is slamming him. Here's what Kellyanne Conway said about that a little short time ago on Fox and Friends this morning. Listen.
It's a terrible strategy to basically go on a full-on assault on the FBI director, calling him out and telling him to put everything out on the table. Hillary Clinton can do that today. She just has to call her friend and confidant, Huma Abedin, and say, tell us what's in the email. Tell us what's on the devices that you shared with your pedophile husband who's sexting a 15-year-old girl in North Carolina, which is how we got back to this place in the first instance.
On the campaign trail today, Donald Trump starts his day in Nevada, goes back to Colorado, where he was yesterday, then off to New Mexico, and tomorrow he's playing in blue Michigan because he's trying to expand the map based on some internal polling that shows that the race in both New Mexico and Michigan may be starting to swing, if not in his favor, at least to a closer race. Eric?
All right, John, who looks like you're in Venice, but yes, you're at the Venetian. John, thank you.
You know, that's the thing. That's the thing about Las Vegas. Everything looks like somewhere else, but it's really not.
Yeah, you got New York just down the street. Maybe we'll show that in another hour.
Exactly.
John, thank you. Melissa?
So, what do we make of this investigation and its impact on the race? Let's bring in our panel. Ed Rollins is the former campaign manager for the Reagan-Bush ticket in 1984 and chief strategist of the Trump super PAC. We have Joe Trippiero as well. He is a former campaign manager for Howard Dean and a Fox News. For getting up and coming on today. Ed, let me start with you. So we know so far that this all arose from this investigation. Very sordid investigation. It doesn't seem like it's likely to get resolved anytime soon, though.
I don't believe it gets resolved. I think what happens, though, is that voters out there, especially independent voters, the very idea that Huma, who's her #1 aide, would have in a position to share this with her ex-husband. You know, whatever these documents may be, you're not allowed to share your confidential documents or anything. And obviously the FBI agents who were investigating and found this basically thought there was something sufficient to bring it up to the director of the FBI to basically reopen this.
Yeah.
And it was their recommendation. So my sense is that they're very much on the defensive this week. Obviously Trump can be on the offensive, which is always a better place to be in a campaign.
It is, but Joe, you know, while the Trump team is relishing this and sort of rolling around in it, thrilled as they can be, on the Democrat side, they're saying, well, you know what, this energizes our base because a lot of our folks had gotten complacent. Now they feel like there's a lot at stake, and it could end up backfiring on Trump and sending more Clinton supporters out to vote who maybe thought it was over and it wasn't necessary for them to go. What do you think of that theory?
Look, I don't think there's any doubt that this helps Trump. I mean, just in terms of the momentum, he was losing steam. Actually, he was losing energy with some of his supporters going into this. I think his supporters are re-energized. I also do think, by the way, though, that that people who underestimate how energized this has made the Democratic base shouldn't do that either. I mean, I think there's a lot of energy now on both sides. Both sides seeing at one point or another Comey seeing him as being unfair or fair. I mean, as we've seen, like everybody's switching on whether he's a hero or not. But I think the energy is there. I think the early my guess is that what we're going to see is the race continuing to narrow as it was already doing.
Yeah.
And this in the end benefits Trump, but I think turnout may be the whole thing now.
Yeah.
And I do think Clinton's got a better operation
Ed,
there, so we'll see.
Without question. Ed, I do quibble with Joe's first point, though, because he said that Trump supporters were losing energy. And in fact, in the polls that we're looking at this morning, where he polled within a point of Hillary Clinton, all those were taken before this whole reopening of the FBI's case into her emails broke on Friday. And in fact, he had been closing the gap, and I'd love your opinion. Maybe it was the WikiLeaks, or maybe it was everybody getting their Obamacare premiums. I mean, that was a huge part of last week's coverage.
I think Mrs. Clinton has had a terrible couple of weeks here. One, the Obamacare increases, the WikiLeaks stuff about the Clinton Foundation, and now they have this. And you always want to control the last elements of your campaign, the last week. And the idea that a former disgraced member of Congress who's been negotiating with the FBI basically is going to have probably more say in what gets released and what doesn't get released, who basically has very serious charges pending against him, certainly would drive me crazy if I was sitting running this campaign. So I don't think they can relax. I think they've got to basically be very much on the defensive all week.
Joe, Ed talks about the last days of the campaign. I mean, dare I say, in this campaign cycle, 9 days is a long, long time. And there are a lot of people out there saying that, you know, maybe the Democrats have another bomb to drop on Donald Trump. We've got a ways to go here.
Well, no, and that's right, Melissa. That's what I was saying. I didn't mean to, if I gave the wrong impression. What I was saying is, after the Billy Bush video, we saw Trump. It was Trump that was sort of losing energy with his supporters. There was a drop-off.
Oh, for sure, yes.
Now that has turned. Again, it's sort of both of these candidates, when the focus is on them, they do poorly.
Right.
And so right now the focus is on Hillary. That's not good. It's off of Trump. But does it get back on Trump? And sometimes Trump does that to himself. So we'll have to see. There are 9 days left, and anything can happen.
He's been very good, though.
That Kellyanne Conway, or maybe you're doing this, putting oven mitts on Donald Trump and duct taping them on so that he is not able to use his Twitter. Are you doing that?
Yeah, I'm certainly not, and I don't believe Kellyanne. But I will say this: he's given 3 or 4 really top-notch speeches. He's out there campaigning very, very aggressively, and he's very disciplined in his message, and I think that's very, very important. Again, he has to bring his Republicans home, and they're coming home, and this race does not get decided by Democrats or Republicans. It gets decided by independents, and right now the independents are going to him.
We have to leave it there, gentlemen. Thanks for your comments this morning. We appreciate them. Have a great day.
Good to be with you.
Eric.
Oven mitts. Maybe we need something stronger than that. Well, we have a Fox News alert for you. Another powerful earthquake has hit central Italy. This, of course, months after that other quake devastated parts of the region, killing hundreds. Coming up, we'll look at how officials there are responding to what you see there, the latest destruction. And there is new data breaking down on who exactly is turning up to vote early and what that means for the race for the White House, as both candidates are urging their voters and supporters to head to the polls right now.
In 10 days, we are going to win the state of Colorado. And we are going to win back the White House. Early voting is underway, so make sure you get out.
You don't have to wait for Election Day anymore because early voting is now underway in 37 states across the country. You know, already more than 19 million people have cast their ballots for president. You know, by tracking the party affiliation of the voters who have voted, we are somewhat able to try and determine the trends. The data show that more Democrats are voting in some of the battleground states like Florida, Arizona, and Colorado. Our Republicans have the edge in another battleground state, in Ohio, and also in Iowa. So let's divine these tea leaves like Karnak. Joining us is John Bussey, Associate Editor for the Wall Street Journal. So, John, it seems like it's kind of a mix. I mean, you have some battleground states in which the Democrats are leading in these, and others where the Republicans are.
Yeah, that's right. And that 19 million figure should not be sort of just go by viewers. That's 20% of the electorate. So for those who are waiting for Election Day to happen, guess what? It already started happening a couple of days ago. We're in the middle of it right now. So lots of opinions are being expressed at the polls. A lot of that data also is pre-FBI announcement. So we're not really sure how much that's affecting the voter. But about 8% of the voters are independent. What our Wall Street Journal poll showed was that something on the order of 30% of them are leaning Republican, those independent voters that remain to vote, and 21% Democratic. But the downside, that's the good news for the Republicans, the downside of that is just about 42% of that 8% of that independent voter that both candidates are vying for feel highly energized to go to the polls. A lot of them just won't turn out.
And it's interesting that when you have these type of events like the Comey announcement, that could affect someone voting today or this afternoon.
Yes, that's right. Now, it won't affect those who already did, right? So because of the early voting process, you already have 20% of the electorate, giving their, showing their affiliation and going to the polls and voting. But it certainly can affect what happens from now on. But what we're seeing, because the early voting only really reflects what the person's party registration is. We don't know how many of those registered Democrats are voting Republican or the other way around. That'll come out only in the final numbers. But because the Democrats seem to be ahead in the early voting process, it once again reflects on the ground game of the Hillary Clinton campaign.
And you talk about the ground game, and that was very big, especially in Ohio for President Obama and some other states. Take a look. There's a conflict in mail-in versus those who are early voting. In Florida, for example, the Republicans are leading in mail-in. They're also leading in Nevada. But those who are actually early voting seem to skew more Democratic. So is that a reflection of pulling the body into the poll is the ground game versus someone who mails an absentee ballot?
Yeah, well, that could very well be. And what also might be the case is that you are seeing the ground game of the Democrats getting the voter out there early, sending in the ballot, going to the voting booth early. But that doesn't necessarily mean that momentum is going to carry through to Election Day. Is that dominance in the voting now going to happen also on November 8th? Perhaps you see it skew the other direction.
And finally, a lot of supporters of early voting say that it increases the number of Americans who can vote, not leading to suppression or intimidation. But some others, like William Gardner, he's the Secretary of State of New Hampshire, the veteran Secretary of State, where in New Hampshire they only vote on one day, Election Day, and they're breaking records, he says. And he says in some way that early voting, you can almost have buyer's remorse. Because let's say you already vote for somebody, especially you saw it in the primaries, where you voted for somebody and they dropped out. Maybe you would have voted for someone else. How does that affect, finally, a voter who has early voted and may now go, oops, I could have had a V8. I mean, why did I vote for this person? I should have done something else.
Surely can happen. Surely can happen. But if you look at the data, the vast bulk of voters make their decision well in advance of several weeks ahead of the election. They've kind of already come to their decision. There's certainly a category that is, as you describe, they're weighing it down to the end, and they're trying to decide, am I going to go Democrat, am I going to go Republican, am I going to go independent? Those individuals may be caught out. I think that anybody who lives in a big city particularly is very happy for early voting because those long lines at the polls can discourage voters. You do not want to discourage the democratic process.
That's true, and that means with the small d.
Yes,
correct. Absolutely, of course. John Bussey, we thank you so much. And, of course, we're going to be on the issues throughout the campaign on the problems at the polls. We've been covering that, and we'll do so right through and after Election Day. Thank you. Pleasure. Melissa?
Donald Trump trying to flip a key battleground state that went to the Democrats the past 2 presidential elections. Why the numbers show he just might pull it off. So which state is it? Sounds like fun.
Well, you know, Donald Trump lost Iowa in the primary, but he could potentially win the state on November 8th. President Obama did carry Iowa twice. So why is Hillary Clinton apparently not gaining more momentum in that important state? Peter Doocy is live in downtown Des Moines with some of the answers. Hello, Peter.
Hello, Eric. Trump is up right now 1.5 points in the Real Clear Politics average of Iowa polls. That's a lead that he's held since September 1st, and that is really something because he was not the first choice, as you just mentioned, of Iowa Republicans this past winter. They were instead really excited about Senator Ted Cruz this winter. They helped him win more caucus votes than any Republican in the history of the Iowa caucus, but the party leadership here believes that Republicans channeled all of their enthusiasm about this election in general into support for Donald Trump. And the GOP chairman told us he thinks Friday's October surprise from the FBI is going to further sink Hillary Clinton here.
An electorate here that's used to being discerning, to digging through all the noise and getting to the nub of things. I think this is going to get people to get their shovels out. I think they're going to dig, and I think they're going to find that this is corruption versus change.
With that said, the numbers show there is a little bit less interest so far in this election than there was in 2012. That's based on early ballot returns. This time 4 years ago, nearly 532,000 Iowans had already mailed in their absentee ballots. And that's 130,000 plus more than officials have tallied so far as of the last update here in 2016. Registered Democrats have returned the most ballots to this point. That's followed by Republicans and then independents. But prominent Republicans in this state have been very warm to Trump compared to some other swing states where incumbent office holders have either kept him at arm's length or disavowed him in an attempt to preserve their position in close re-election battles. And because they're all seen as being in this together, experts think Trump gets a boost. And we did hear this morning in the Des Moines Register from a former Iowa House Speaker, Christopher Rance, who says, quote, "Assuming that Iowa is still in the light red column, make no mistake, it is in large part because the entire party apparatus is in solid shape behind Trump." And the Trump campaign officials that we spoke to yesterday thinks it is a very good sign for them that when Trump and Clinton held events in the same city, Cedar Rapids, on the same day, Friday, Trump drew a crowd of more than 5,000, and that was more than double the crowd that Secretary Clinton had just a few hours earlier. Back to you.
Yeah, and, you know, Peter, to be fair to Mr. Trump, there was only about 3% that separated him from Senator Cruz in the caucus. That's about 6,000 votes, and that is actually more than Jeb Bush got in the state. So we'll see what happens on November 8th. Peter, thank you.
Okay, so we've got some brand new swing state polls. These numbers were just released this morning. First is in North Carolina. Hillary Clinton holds a 6-point lead, 47% to Donald Trump, 41%. Gary Johnson in there as well with about 8. It is a different story in the battleground state of Florida, though, where Trump has cut into Hillary Clinton's lead, 4-point lead from a week ago. It is now a statistical dead heat. She's 1 point ahead, but you see that's within the margin of error. 45% support Hillary Clinton, 44% support Trump. Joining me now is Jason Miller. He is Senior Communications Advisor for the Trump campaign. Also buried in there, I thought this stat was fascinating, and I haven't seen this before. So among the 36% of likely voters who say they've already gone out and voted, they've already counted their ballots, she's way ahead, 54% to 37%. But among those who haven't voted yet in Florida but describe themselves as likely voters, he's way ahead, 51% to 42%. What is that? I mean, does that tell you they have a better ground game to get people out early? Does that tell you people are changing their minds? What do you think?
Well, if you're a Donald Trump supporter like I am,
right?
Obviously very excited about this. Let me tell you why you should be excited about Florida this morning. There's a New York Times Upshot poll out showing Mr. Trump ahead by 4%. There was also another poll that came out just the other day that had Mr. Trump ahead by 4% in Florida. But one of the things to point to with the polling, there's polling, but we can also look at ballots returned. And usually Republicans start off behind with the absentees and early voting, with all the early voting. Well, Democrats will frequently go and vote more earlier, and so going into Election Day, Republicans will usually be a little bit behind in Florida. Here's what's important. We're already 100,000 votes ahead of the pace of where Mitt Romney was 4 years ago, and that's a combination of Republicans being up 7% and Democrats being down 10%. So from our perspective, we're very excited where Mr. Trump is, and Florida's looking very good.
Let's talk a little bit about North Carolina. He is behind, as we said in our introduction, in North Carolina. We saw the governor on earlier today. He was saying that they have really struggled with Obamacare in their state, that he almost was, I think, had no providers this year. They were negotiating. Everybody wanted to leave the state because none of the insurers are making money at the same time. The premiums are skyrocketing. He's a Trump supporter, so he's incented to say this, but he thinks that Obamacare is a huge issue in his state and that bodes well for Trump as more people open up that premium for next year.
Well, the Obamacare news this past week really is what started moving a big chunk of this trend.
You think it was that and not WikiLeaks?
Well, we had the Obamacare, and then we had the $66 million Clinton Inc. pay-to-play, the WikiLeaks revelations, and then, of course, the FBI news on Friday. But in addition to Obamacare in North Carolina, this is a state that's been hit very hard by the trade issue. And Mr. Trump's message about renegotiating some of these trade deals is really cutting through. Going back to the point about early voting and absentees, though, in North Carolina, again, that delta of where we're at right now, we're 35,000 votes ahead of the delta of where it was 4 years ago. And so from our perspective, we're way ahead of the pace. And we see another polling showing the race much closer. The poll that you had put up actually was taken before this FBI news came out.
But today we see Trump out in Las Vegas. He's out west. It seems like, why isn't he spending more time in these places where he really needs to turn things around? North Carolina, Florida is a must-win. He's right on the bubble. Why is he out west?
Well, there are a lot of very important states when you're running for president. Mr. Trump was just in Florida for several days this past week, and Ohio, and in North Carolina. We're out in Nevada this morning, and then to New Mexico, and then to Colorado. New Mexico, let's talk about New Mexico and Michigan, where we're going to be tomorrow. The tide has really turned in this race. We've seen the numbers close. We're seeing this from internal numbers. We're seeing this from independent numbers. We show New Mexico as being a dead heat. Yeah. This is a state where Democrats have won for the last several cycles. We feel that we can win in New Mexico. That's why Mr. Trump's going to be there today.
He obviously has a lot of momentum right now, but are you worried as a Trump supporter that there is too much time left on the clock? I mean, we have 9 days left. We were joking during the break that I remember at the beginning of last week when this stuff started coming out, Trump supporters were saying quietly, I don't know. It feels like there's not enough time left for this wiki stuff to really sink in, for people to absorb it. Now we've seen yet another big swing in momentum in this election, and we've got 9 days left. Are you worried that it could turn again, that the Democrats have something else up their sleeve?
Well, the only variables we can control for are our own schedules and what we're doing on the campaign. And if you've seen Mr. Trump on the campaign trail going to 3, 4, 5 events a day, these big, huge rallies, I mean, we feel like we have all the energy and momentum going in our favor, and we have enough, there's enough time for us to make sure we get the win.
A lot of people have asked this question this morning. How do you keep him on message? Because when the spotlight turns away from him and onto Hillary Clinton, it turns out usually well for him. It's shining on some sort of scandal. Then he tends to step on the news in that way and take the spotlight back to himself in a way that doesn't benefit him. Do you think he's disciplined enough in this home stretch to kind of stay out of the way of all this bad news that's going her way?
Well, I think that's a good question. I think one of the things that's important for folks at home to know is that Mr. Trump is remarkably focused right now. He knows exactly what's at stake. This is the future of the country. 9 days to do it. He's been fantastic on the campaign trail. The energy, like I said, the crowd sizes of people. I mean, we had 20,000 people in Tampa just a few days ago. And he knows what he has to do to get the win, and I'm fully confident he'll do it.
Who do you think he's listening to the most right now, if you had to guess? Is it Kellyanne? Is it his family? Is it his own inner voice?
Well, the thing about Mr. Trump is he's been a successful businessman, as you've seen. And what I found with successful businessmen is they usually take input from a number of places, rely on their own judgment to decide, here's what I think is the best course forward. And, you go all the way back to different things in this race that Mr. Trump has called, even calling out the Huma Abedin and Anthony Weiner emails. He was calling that a year ago. People were...
and he was vilified for it, and here it turns out it was, once again, it's another thing that he said. People said, how outrageous, and then all of a sudden it comes true.
And I think the one thing I'd say about Mr. Trump is the instincts and the judgment that he has is something that really sets him apart.
Jason Miller, thank you so much. Eric.
I'm
Why on earth wouldn't Hillary Clinton say to her closest personal aide, was there any stuff on that on your laptop, and what was it?
Chris, again, I appreciate your question because people want answers. There's nothing about Huma Abedin in the letter that was
I know
sent
that,
out.
but why wouldn't Clinton ask her?
Well, why wouldn't Clinton ask anybody? They could be emails from anybody in the world.
In his memo to employees, Director Comey said they don't know if the emails are significant, but former FBI agents tell Fox News anything suggesting intent, lying to investigators, obstruction of justice, or sharing classified information with a foreign entity would warrant such a dramatic move.
It sounds like, though, we shouldn't expect to get full details or any kind of timeline that would get us before Election Day.
Well, based on our reporting yesterday, there are thousands of emails involved. They have to be reviewed to determine what's new and what's a duplicate. Then it has to go through a classification review, which involves sending it out to multiple agencies. So that is something, the expectation I was told the FBI is that it cannot be accomplished before Election Day.
All right. Catherine, thank you.
You're welcome.
Leland.
And as we continue our coverage of this, the Clinton campaign once praised James Comey as a principled career lawman beyond reproach. But now they are in full-on assault mode against the FBI director. In Florida, the candidate herself called his actions troubling and unprecedented. Our Mike Emanuel traveling with the Clinton campaign in the Sunshine State. Good morning, Mike.
Well, hi, Leland. Yeah, with time becoming ever more precious in this campaign, Hillary Clinton is already making her third stop so far today. Clinton visited an African-American church in Fort Lauderdale this afternoon and talked about staying focused no matter what is thrown at her and her supporters. Earlier, she spoke briefly at an early voting brunch here in Miami. This as her campaign is facing more questions about her email investigation. Her closest aide, Huma Abedin, is not on this trip. It was thousands of Abedin's emails on her estranged husband's laptop that reignited the FBI probe. Clinton's campaign manager expressed frustration with FBI Director Comey and tried to minimize the latest email questions.
This issue was vetted through for months. Director Comey came to a conclusion. We believe that voters have already made up their minds on this issue, so we find it very strange that 10 days out that he's putting this letter out there.
Clinton ripped the FBI director yesterday, calling his recent actions on her email probe deeply troubling. She also blasted Donald Trump.
He is doing his best to confuse, mislead, and discourage the American people. I think it's time for Donald Trump to stop fear-mongering, to stop disgracing himself, to stop attacking our democracy. We can't let him get away with this, can we?
This hour, Clinton is at a soul food restaurant in nearby Fort Lauderdale. She's trying to make sure a key constituency for the Democrats, the African-American community, turns out to vote. Leland?
You know, Mike, we had heard from the Clinton campaign. They were almost expanding the map, thinking of going to places like Arizona and the like later in the week. Any change to the travel itinerary now because of these new revelations?
You know, not that we've heard so far. That is a really smart question, something we've been asking. And so far, they say they're still planning to go to Arizona midweek, which was surprising because it's typically a Republican state. But most of the other trips are battleground states that she would be going to either way. And it sounds like her plans at this stage are staying what was announced several days ago.
All right. Mike Emanuel on the trail. Thanks, Mike. Shannon?
And while Hillary Clinton's on the defensive, her Republican opponent, Donald Trump, is taking full advantage of what many are calling the FBI's October surprise. Trump has stepped up attacks on Clinton and her use of a private email server this weekend. John Roberts is in Las Vegas ahead of Trump's next campaign stop. All right, John, what is the latest there?
Good afternoon to you, Shannon. Donald Trump will be on stage at the Venetian Hotel here in downtown Las Vegas somewhere about an hour from now, I would expect. Here's a look at the crowd that is gathered there already. This is a 75,000 square foot ballroom. They gave away 9,000 tickets for this. Donald Trump appearing today as a new ABC News tracking poll shows the race has narrowed to just a single point between him and Hillary Clinton. She leads 46 to 45. But what's really interesting about this is since this tracking poll started a week ago Saturday on the 23rd, Donald Trump has gained 11 points and continues to climb. Yesterday in Colorado, he obviously went out hard against the reopening of the FBI investigation, doing a complete backflip on FBI Director James Comey. This is a guy who he has been criticizing, soundly criticizing, for 4 months now proclaiming that he's got the courage and conviction and the integrity to reopen this investigation. Donald Trump also slamming the Attorney General Loretta Lynch for trying to strong-arm Comey into not sending the letter that he did send to the leaders of Congress and offering no quarter to Hillary Clinton for getting mired up in this latest scandal. Here's Trump from yesterday.
Hillary has nobody but herself to blame for her mounting legal difficulties. Her criminal action was willful, deliberate, intentional, and purposeful. As long as she and Bill got the money, the safety of your family made absolutely no difference to her.
This daily ABC News tracking poll also gave us our first indication of how the FBI investigation is playing in the campaign trail. 3 out of 10 people asked said that they would be less likely to vote for Hillary Clinton as a result of this. Obviously, some of those people could have been Republicans, but if you apply the percentages in the poll, you get about 12.5% of people who would support Hillary Clinton saying that they might rethink voting for her. But the big question is, would those people naturally gravitate over to Donald Trump, or could they go somewhere else? Because it's no secret that a lot of persuadable voters still have serious reservations about Donald Trump. Listen to this exchange from Fox News Sunday this morning between our Chris Wallace and Mike Pence.
What do you say to voters who may worry that Hillary Clinton is corrupt, but worry whether or not Donald Trump is competent?
Well, I think people look at the totality of this campaign. They look at the agenda we're running on. They look at the totality of a career of a man who has built an extraordinary business, and they know they're looking at a leader in Donald Trump.
And before coming here to the Venetian for his first big political rally of the day, Donald Trump stopped by a local church to worship, or Shannon, more accurately, perhaps, to give thanks for James Comey. Shannon?
That might be how they're feeling this weekend in the Trump campaign. John Roberts on the trail. Thank you so much, John. Well, reaction has been swift on Capitol Hill following the news that the FBI will take another look at Hillary Clinton's email use. House Speaker Paul Ryan says Clinton has only herself to blame, and some Republicans are urging the FBI to pursue a, quote, thorough new probe. The chairman of the House Judiciary Committee, Congressman Bob Goodlatte, joins us now live. Mr. Chairman, thank you for joining us. I understand that you
Thank you, Shannon.
I understand that you and one of the top Democrats on the committee, Congressman John Conyers, have had some kind of communication with FBI Director Comey this weekend. What can you tell us?
Yes, yesterday afternoon, John Conyers, who's the ranking Democrat on the Judiciary Committee, and I both had the opportunity to speak with the FBI Director. I asked him what the status was of the perjury charges that were referred to the United States Attorney for the District of Columbia and to him following his press conference in which he outlined all of the things that Hillary Clinton had done wrong, all the things that she had done in violation of the Espionage Act. We then got him to compare that to her actual sworn testimony before the House Select Committee on Benghazi, and in questioning by Trey Gowdy, he acknowledged that what she said was completely inconsistent with what he said. We asked if he was going to be she was going to be investigated for perjury, and he said it hadn't received that. So 3 days later, I and Jason Chaffetz, chairman of the Government Oversight Committee, sent to the U.S. Attorney that referral. It's now been more than 3 months, and we still haven't heard back from them. So when some are complaining that this recent revelation that they're taking another examination at the emails, complain about protocol. What is the protocol for waiting more than 3 months to let the American people know that something that they can all watch on television, they can all see his testimony, they can all see her testimony and compare, and they've drawn no conclusion whatsoever about whether or not she should be charged with perjury, which is a very serious crime, which is a felony. This is lying to the United States Congress, effectively lying to the American people.
Do you have confidence, though, that they are proceeding with that investigation? It's maybe just not to the point that they're ready to announce any kind of results?
We have not received any confirmation whatsoever that they are in any way taking this very seriously at all, because we now see that senior Justice Department officials try to dissuade the FBI director from saying, when he said back in July, if we receive substantive information about this case, we'll re-examine it and we'll let you know. And he's just simply doing exactly what he said, but they're not letting the American people know about a very serious matter that the Congress asked the Justice Department to look into, and so far we've heard crickets.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I got to ask you how this potentially plays out. Should Hillary Clinton be elected president within, less than a week and a half, is she then going to be facing, possibly from your committee and others, ongoing investigations in addition to whatever may be happening with the FBI? How does that play out for her as president? Will you call her to testify before your committees? Can you force her to?
Well, those questions are premature, but I did ask Director Comey yesterday to make available to the American people, just as John Conyers and other and Democrats have asked, as much information as possible so they can make that decision when they go to the polls. But I've also made it very clear that if, because of the thousands of emails they've got to examine, and if because of the fact that some of these may be classified documents and he can't harm the investigation, he can't compromise the investigation, the Judiciary Committee will continue to do its work in following the truth wherever it leads.
Were you surprised to get that letter on Friday? Did you have any inkling it was coming? And what does it, at the core, really mean to you at this point?
I was stunned, and I think because of the answers he gave back in July, when, as you'll recall, a great many, including a lot of members of the Judiciary Committee, were dismayed by his press conference when he said she'd violated all these things. A lot of us were expecting to hear, therefore, there's going to be an indictment. Instead, we heard a, however, we're not going to indict her. And then lots of questions arose about the conduct of this investigation, the granting of immunity to 5 of her aides, the fact that 2 of those aides actually sat in after they'd been granted immunity on her own questioning by the FBI. All of this is highly irregular. I've heard from FBI agents and former FBI agents and prosecutors who can't believe what took place back then. I think the director knows that it was vitally important that he not let this slip until after the election and let the American people know that substantive information was available that would cause this case to be reopened and these emails examined.
Mr. Chairman, very quickly, because we're out of time, I just want to ask you, do you have confidence that any DOJ, any Justice Department, would move forward with indicting someone who had been elected president, whether it's president or elect, or actually has been sworn in? Do you think the Justice Department would move forward with an indictment?
I think that Director Comey, whether you like the decision he made back in July or you like the decision he made now, is acting conscientiously to try to address a very serious national crisis that would be a very serious problem if she were elected President of the United States and had been found to have violated the law. So I believe that he, in response to a number of people working on this case in the Justice Department, complaining about the course of events earlier on, particularly the Attorney General getting on an airplane with Mrs. Clinton's husband, the former president, right before this announcement was made that she was not going to be prosecuted. All of these things, I think, lead me to believe that there are many in the Justice Department and in the FBI who want to protect the respect for the rule of law, the importance of these law enforcement agencies, and would step forward and make sure that this was done.
All right, we'll see where the facts lead. Mr. Chairman, thank you very much for your time today. Good to see you, sir.
Thank you, Shannon.
Well, you've seen a little bit of the interviews with Chris Wallace and Mike Pence, along with Robbie Mook. Well, there's a lot more fireworks as the Trump and Clinton campaigns react to the renewed FBI probe into Hillary Clinton's email use. That is today on Fox News Sunday. You can see those interviews, and you do not want to miss them. Please know the deal.
We're going to take a look live. Mike Pence now, governor, and now the vice presidential nominee for the GOP ticket, speaking live in Rochester, New Hampshire in the closing days of the campaign. Let's listen in.
So let me tell you where I stand. I choose a stronger America. I choose a more prosperous America. I choose an America that upholds our highest constitutional principles. So I choose to stand with Donald Trump and every American who knows we can make America great again. You know, and it's not like it's exactly been a fair fight out there. You know what I'm saying? I mean, I get up every morning, it's like I got to turn on the television with a stick. I never know what's going to be on there, you know? I mean, it's like you get up every day since I joined this team. It's like it's 2-on-1, right? You know, with the Patriots out there playing every game on the road with hometown refs and hometown crowds. And I know you think they'd still be winning, right? But the truth of the matter is,
listening a little bit there to Mike Pence on the campaign trail. All the candidates are out there, both the presidential and vice presidential contenders. So we will dip in as they are speaking live today. And now on to other news.
And back to politics. Roughly 1/3 of voters say the FBI's new look at Hillary Clinton's emails make them less likely to vote for the Democratic candidate. The Trump campaign certainly thinks that's good news for them. Mike Pence has been talking about that a lot, but it could also be good news for third-party candidates as well. Former Massachusetts Governor Bill Weld is the Libertarian vice presidential nominee. Joins us now from New York. Governor, nice to see you. To your experience as governor in a minute, but we're going to go way back in your career to your experience at the Department of Justice and your thoughts now on Director Comey reopening this investigation.
Right, and I say this not with my candidate hat on, but with my former hat as head of the criminal division of the Justice Department in Washington. I know everybody's on hair trigger out there, but I do think it's important not to panic and to focus on what happened or did not happen Friday. And I've read both of Director Comey's letters. Essentially, what he said was, I told you, Congress, I'd keep you updated. We found some more emails, yet more emails. We're not sure what they contain. We haven't had a chance to read them yet. In fact, we can't read them until we go get a warrant. And so we'll read them, and if they contain anything, well, then we'll play that as it lays. What it did not say was we're reopening the investigation, although that was widely reported. So I think there's far less there than meets the eye. And the FBI already has 15,000 emails from Huma Abedin that she disclosed in civil litigation. So it's not like they're coming to this as a fresh surprise. So against the time-honored Justice Department procedures of not making a big move publicly right before an election and not disclosing what's going on in an investigation, the sending of the letter by the director, I personally find inconceivable. And it's particularly surprising since Jim Comey has always long had a good to very good reputation in the Department of Justice. I think he just felt middled by having told Congress he'd keep them updated, and he had to do a balancing act. And I think he came down in the wrong place. I think with deepest deference, and I'm a big admirer of his, but I think he looked out for himself and he didn't look out for the rest of us.
Well, that's an important point, as you say, looking out for himself, which is conceivably the one thing the FBI director is not supposed to do. He's supposed to look out for all of us and frankly, look out for those who are trying to do harm to all of us. Is a candidate, and clearly this is in one way or another put the hand on the scale of the election. Give me the emotional response. All of a sudden, as you're heading into the final days, you have your closing argument, and then the FBI director, who's not been elected by anybody, completely changes the game.
My emotional response is this should not happen. I mean, I absorbed and mainlined the Justice Department's motto, which is to dispense justice, do justice without fear or favor. And I don't feel like that's being done here. You know, there's time to prevent any lasting damage from occurring, but it's certainly right now it's troubling.
Well, certainly there's a lot of calls for James Comey to do what he did back earlier in the summer and come out and explain himself a little bit more. Both sides saying that. Perhaps you'd agree with that.
Well, that would make it worse to call more attention to this when they haven't even read the emails. I repeat, there's no substance yet on the table. We found some more emails. We have not read them. All the more surprising that would be the occasion for a formal letter to 8 committees of Congress.
Well, I would say I think you're the first person who's been on television in the past 48 hours to turn the temperature down on this, and I appreciate you doing so. It's an interesting perspective. The one thing, though, this has done, and the polling data supports this, is it has tightened the race. And certainly we've seen polling data that shows folks saying, I was going to vote for Hillary Clinton. I may not now. I may hold off. We had some interviews with folks at early voting stations saying just that. The question to you is, it all of a sudden puts the Libertarian ticket in the 5 to 10% range that you all are both in right now, possibly playing spoiler. Does that concern you at all? Does it concern you that now you guys may be the deciding factor in this election, especially in some key swing states like Georgia?
No, I mean, Governor Johnson and I play straight baseball. We're in the fight of our lives, frankly, to make that 5% threshold so that the Libertarians would have formal status going forward and qualify for matching funds and not have any more ballot access problems as have bedeviled them in the past. And, you know, if we couldn't run the table and win it all, which after we didn't get into debates, that just was not going to happen, this is what we're aiming for. And I think it's structurally in the interest of the United States for the Libertarian Party to have that formal seat at the table going forward in our national political dialogue, because I think we got a better combination of policies, fiscally responsible and socially liberal, than either of the other two parties.
Well, we wish you luck coming into the last 10 days or so, sir. Thanks for being with us. Appreciate your thoughts earlier as well.
Thanks so much.
All the best. Shannon. Donald Trump lost the Iowa caucuses, but he and Hillary Clinton are now tied at 44% in the latest Quinnipiac poll of Iowa voters released on Thursday. Democrats have won the Hawkeye state in 6 of the past 7 presidential elections, but this year, Iowa may be Trump's best chance to flip a blue state red. Peter Doocy live in Des Moines, Iowa, with how Mr. Trump and his campaign is trying to do just that. Hi, Peter.
Hi, Leland. This is where everything got kicked off in 2016. Iowa, the winner here in February, on February 1st, Ted Cruz got more caucus votes than any Republican in history. Donald Trump got the second most. But believe it or not, on paper, enthusiasm right now in Iowa is actually down compared to where it was 4 years ago. If you look at early ballot returns so far versus the same time period of the Obama versus Romney contest, there are 130,000 fewer that have been sent in. More than 531,000 ballots mailed in this time in 2012, less than 400,000 this time around so far. Still, though, the Republican Party in Iowa thinks Democrats are the only ones that need to be worried about a lack of excitement.
Look at the crowds. Just today, you know, you got the same city, and compare those crowds. You could almost fit everybody in Hillary's rally in a phone booth. There's an enthusiasm gap. There's no doubt about it. And I think that enthusiasm gap is going to mean that people that might have even said, I'm voting for Hillary, are going to give Donald Trump another shot at it.
An Iowa State University political science professor, Stephen Schmidt, emailed us to say this, quote, Iowa has been turning very red, so I'm not surprised Trump and Clinton are in a dead heat. With new email revelations, I think it could be a tipping point in favor of Trump. And there's something else that people in the know think has been aiding Trump here. Prominent Republican office holders in Iowa are vocal supporters. And that's not all. These Republicans in Iowa are all doing well in the polls themselves, including Senator Chuck Grassley, who opened up a 17-point lead in his contest in the Real Clear Politics average of polls in what was a close race just a few weeks ago. And a former Iowa House Speaker, Christopher Rance, is quoted in today's Des Moines Register on the front page as saying that, quote, assuming that Iowa is still in the light red column, make no mistake, it is in large part because the entire party apparatus is in solid shape behind Trump. And again, that is notable because this is a place that Barack Obama won twice. Leland?
Noteworthy, though, that Joni Ernst is perhaps not quite as vocal as Chuck Grassley here as the election takes shape. Peter Doocy on the ground in Iowa. Thanks, Peter. Shannon?
Well, as the presidential candidates make their closing arguments to voters in battleground states like Florida, where Hillary Clinton is today, will the FBI's decision to restart its investigation into her email use while Secretary of State have an impact? Here to weigh in, Chris Stirewalt, Fox News digital politics editor and host of Perino and Stirewalt. I'll tell you what. Good to see you, Chris.
Tell you what.
All right.
How we doing, Team Bream?
Listen, we are doing excellent. I want to know what you think. It's so late in the game. We know that millions of people have already voted. But, of course, as we often see down the home stretch, the polls are tightening. Do you think this makes a difference?
I think it certainly makes a difference right now. We don't know how much of a difference. We have some early polling data, but not enough to be conclusive. The issue here for Hillary Clinton is that she is not a very popular presidential candidate. The only person to run for president for a major party to be less popular than her, Donald J. Trump. So she has a problem that a lot of the people who are voting for her don't feel great about their choice. When you add in the fact of a handy, helpful reminder from the Federal Bureau of Investigations that there isn't an open probe into her conduct, then perhaps it takes some of those folks and tips them over, maybe not to Trump, but maybe to not vote for her or vote for a third-party candidate.
Or maybe stay home. Yeah. Okay. Clinton campaign manager Robbie Mook had this to say this morning with our own Chris Wallace on Fox News Sunday about how he thinks this should proceed.
Director Comey owes it to the American people, releasing this just a matter of days before the election to provide all the information. That's what we're asking. Just get all of it out there, and the voters can judge for themselves. We think the voters actually want to hear about what these two candidates are going to do to make a difference in their lives, not more relitigating of this email.
So, Chris, obviously that sounds good, but as we know from what we've heard from all of our reporting, Catherine Herridge earlier today, and what the FBI has said, if this is truly thousands of new documents or emails to go through, that's not going to happen by November 8th.
Well, the reporting now apparently is that they've had these things for nigh on a month and have been going through them. There's reporting in the Washington Post, our own Jennifer Griffin, and others. Brett Baer has already reported that, these were known entities for weeks and weeks. The question becomes, why now? Why, if you had these for weeks and weeks, was the second Friday before the election the time to come out and do it? And I would caution the Clinton campaign this, though. As much as they are probably feeling virtuous in attacking the FBI director, it was a mistake when Donald Trump and his campaign attacked Comey for not pushing for an indictment of Clinton, and it will be a mistake for Clinton and company to attack Comey. Their best bet is to try to weather this storm as quickly as possible and get back on offense and get the conversation back to Donald Trump as soon as they can.
Don't you think it's a shame they didn't have SNL last night? I mean, there's so much good material this week. I found it disturbing that I didn't have that viewing option last night, 1 week out from the campaign. From the election.
Well, you had the Florida State game, and that was pretty entertaining in its own right.
Don't even. I have yet to recover. That's why I have bags under my eyes. But I still love you, even though you brought it up.
Mountaineers lost, so I'm with you in spirit, sister.
All right, we will drown our sorrows later. Chris Stirewalt, always good to see you. Goodbye.
Bicycle.
Don't forget, by the way, Perino and Stirewalt, I'll tell you what is all new tonight, 5 o'clock Eastern, right here on the Fox News Channel.